We have Canada's foremost NFL expert, but he's a CFL aficionado too, Jim Lang, former voice of the Argos. Good day, Jimbo. How are you?
I'm good, gentlemen. How are you guys doing?
Actually, better than you'd think. Better than average out here. No complaints. You are a man that's not shy in opinions. You've made a career of it, and good ones. So can we start with the CFL in the last 24 hours to maybe the last week since news broke that they're looking for federal aid?
I mean, I applaud Randy Ambrosie for trying to get some money. But in Southern Ontario and Quebec, in Montreal and Toronto, there are body bags stacked up like cordwood. And it's carnage. We're talking thousands of people are dying. The senior homes in Ontario and Quebec it's a war zone for the PSWs, for the nurses, for the custodial staff. And they actually just announced that they want to give them some more money per hour because they are frontline workers. When we're talking frontline, as we're talking in a military term, and they've had to call in the Canadian military to assist senior homes in both provinces. And that's a tough ask for Randy Ambrosie right now, considering what's at stake, the businesses that are on the verge of collapsing, small, medium businesses, farmers are hurting across the country. I understand it. I mean, the CFL's in my blood like a lot of people across the country, but the timing's not good for him to ask this because whatever extra money that the Trudeau or whatever premier has is being plowed back into healthcare to keep people alive.
Interesting wording by you, Jim. You might as well have said you got a lot of nerve going in and asking for that amount of money, given all what's going on.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, we have businesses all around here, all around the country, who are teetering, begging for everyone to get back to work so they can keep a roof over their head and keep their family fed. I mean, and that's how desperate it is for some families in this country right now. We have frontline PSWs, personal service workers, nurses who are dying, taking care of the sick and elderly in this country. And the timing could not be worse because they're the only one that I know of that's gone directly to the government and said, we need big money. Hasn't happened in hockey, hasn't happened in basketball or baseball. And sports is my life, but to ask for money right now, considering everything going on, it's a tough ask. I just don't know how they would give them any money. 150, forget that. That's not possible. I mean, if they give anything, it's a fraction. I mean, the farmers, they had talked about how much money they were going to give the agricultural industry in Canada, and it's not as much as they thought it was because I don't think they have as much to give because they're dealing with a healthcare tsunami in this country.
It's funny you mentioned the other leagues, by the way, and we're going to switch to the NFL here, but I do now do a lot of business with the other leagues, and they're sitting there watching the CFL Ottawa situation going, it's a big ask. We're watching this really closely. So it's a domino effect. It's, as Larry Smith said, great article done by Dan Ralph of CP this week, that Larry Smith, the quote, this is a very, very, very sensitive issue. Clearly. Maybe that's an understatement.
It is. No, he nailed it. We get updates every day, emails. My mother-in-law is in a long-term care home where people are dying, where there are personal service workers who are ill. And there's examples like that all over this province. I was talking to a friend in Montreal and they said it's worse. You're talking the two biggest provinces in the country dealing with massive healthcare issues. Do you think they're going to say, oh, sure, here's $150 million to the CFL? No matter how much you love sports or football, that's not going to fly. It is not.
Right. So now to happier topics, if we may. The 2020 NFL schedule released last night. Yeah. I don't know how much you were watching of it. I watched most of it. I loved the way the NFL Network unrolled it. What was your thoughts on how that played out?
It's good for the Buffalo Bills because, Bills fans in Western New York and Buffalo and Southern Ontario have long felt they've been disrespected and don't get enough publicity for how good they are. They're finally getting a number of primetime games in the 2020 season. The other big takeaway, I don't know if fans realize this, there's no overseas games in London. There's no games in Mexico. It's all North America. And both facilities, you guys were just talking about that before I went on, it's muted. When they're saying they're opening facilities, it's with strict conditions. And that's part of the problem in the NFL. For instance, the Raptors facility, like the NBA has strict rules. You have to wear a mask going in. You can work out. You can practice, but no scrimmages, and it has to be limited number of players. So basically, a player at one end of the court, one at the other. So you can't have the whole team in there at one time. And then we're talking with an NBA-sized team with 16 players, a number of coaches. NFL practice, you're going to have with practice squad and injured players and roster players, 65, 70 players with 24 coaches and assistants and trainers. So that's going to be real difficult for Roger Goodell and the NFL when they get to a point where they can have that many bodies together practicing. Right now in the NBA, you're not allowed to scrimmage, even with the facility open, because of concerns about COVID-19. Hockey, I'm not sure what they're going to do. Football, how are they going to practice line play without and exercise physical distancing? So this is a concern now that for the leagues, but then the coaches to actually get their teams ready. This is such a new world, gentlemen. How do you practice the fundamentals of your respective sport when you're not allowed to do it? And until they're allowed, until they're loosened, it's a real tenuous situation. And so for football, for the NFL, as excited as they are, I do know that they're talking about if they have to, they would play the Super Bowl at the end of February and push everything back a month. So if they have to start at early October because Dr. Fauci and the American government and the American healthcare industry says, we just can't start the season right after Labor Day, we are not ready, then they've kind of built that in there. So they have multiple scenarios. So it is exciting about the schedule, but there's a big what if factor as well because of everything going on in the world.
How much have you investigated what I just heard this morning, that there is a tremendous amount of flexibility built into the NFL schedule for this to happen? I mean, I kind of skimmed over it. I didn't really dig into it. What do you know about that?
Well, I think you're 100% right. They've built flexibility on facilities. How late can they go to March 1st? How late can they play games? There's everything's on the table. I mean, the big thing right now in North America is who can get a vaccine and how fast can they get it and how effective is the vaccine? Because right now, as it stands right now, you can't have 80,000 people in a stadium to watch a game. That's not feasible, considering everything going on in the world. But so even if you get to the point where you can play a game, even though the schedule may say that it's the Cowboys playing the 49ers this day, we may not be sure. That's going to become way later. And the other thing is right about now, teams to be getting ready for OTAs, mini camps, things like that. That's out of the window. Players are working out on their own of all leagues. So as far as training camp could be a reduced training camp. Instead of showing up in July, you may show up in August. 1 preseason game, maybe 2, play a season. Maybe no preseason games. They may not be able to do it. I mean, everything's on the table for the NFL and every sports league. Because if you've been tracking this, every league, every day or two has a different scenario where they go, okay, I think this is how we can restart the season. But then it changes based on everything going on in the world. So, yeah, any and all possibilities are open because they have to be. In every league, I know in Toronto, they're talking about using Scotiabank Arena as a hub and have 6 to 8 NHL teams play games here. But the Blue Jays and Raptors probably can't play games in Toronto because of the travel restrictions with the Canadian government. Because players coming from the U.S. would have to quarantine 2 weeks before they play a game. So that's not workable.
Yeah. Well, Clark has asked me to ask you your vote on our poll of where we should go in Florida, which game to pick on our sports trip that we do every year. But the way I'm hearing you talk, you don't think there's going to be games, or at the very least with fans in there. But let me just say this. Well, here's our options. Week 12, Kansas City at Tampa Bay. Week 13, Cincinnati at Miami. Or Week 14, Kansas City at Miami. And this is in concert with our travel agent, by the way, Michelle. So we're taking votes on that.
No.
Yeah.
Week 12. Oh, yeah. Mahomes against Brady. And Tampa's a beautiful stadium. It's one of the nicest. It's older, but the grass is conditioned. I really like Tampa Stadium. And at that time of year, and I mean, Mahomes is the real deal. I mean, he's so special. And Brady, you would think after everything he's done, like he would just, okay, I've done it, but he's got a real chip in his shoulder again this year, again determined to show he still got it, to prove everyone what he's all about. There's going to be some players in that Tampa locker room are going to get a real lesson on what winning and leadership and dedication to the craft of being an athlete's all about, because he's going to hold them to a high standard And Bruce Arians doesn't have to say a lot when you have Tom Brady there. Like, you're coming into the facility for practice. Tom's been there for an hour. You're leaving. Tom's still there. The guilt's going to get to you. Like, maybe I should stay and work out more. Maybe I should study some more, because the guy with all those Super Bowl rings, who's on the Mount Rushmore of greatest players in the history of the league, is working twice as hard as me. So maybe I should as well. So I am really fascinated to see how Tampa responds to his presence and his leadership. And I think that would be an incredible game to be at.
Fascinating is a great term for it. 5 primetime games for the Buccaneers, the most allowable. That's how often they're going to be in primetime. I don't think they were in 1 last year. And by the way, Bill Belichick last night, I don't know if you watched the NFL Network, the interview with Bill. They're like, okay, last question, Bill. It was with Rich Eisen. He's like, so I got to ask you, how would you deal with the post-Tom era? Do you know what his answer was?
No, I missed it. I'm sorry. I missed it.
It's fine. He goes, we won without him. Back in 2009, we had Castle. We won 11-5. We've won without Tom. We'll be fine. I was like, oh, you. But what did you think he was going to say, right?
That's Belichick. I mean, yeah, they won those games, but they missed the playoffs. Miami won the division that year with the Wildcat offense. But who's their quarterback? Hello? Anybody?
Who was the Patriot? Who was the Dolphins?
No. Who's the Patriots starting quarterback this year? Who is
this year? Oh, I know. Well, yeah. I think by the time it's all said and done, I think it's got to be Cam Newton. Who else could it be?
You got me, because right now you got Sam Darnold in New York, who's an up-and-coming quarterback, Allen in Buffalo. So for the Bills and the Jets, everything going on the upheaval in New England, if they don't win the division this year, I mean, because Belichick is going to make sure if things don't work out this year, by 2021, they'll be locked and loaded and ready to go. So you may get a mulligan this year. So if the other teams, the AFC East, think they're going to win the division, they better sell out and push all their chips on the table and do it this year, because it might be their only chance, because a year later, Belichick will have the hammer again, and it's all going to be all his.
Oh, Jim, see, I could go forever. Do you think that this is the same scenario as the Bulls, the Jerry Krause Bulls, that they got rid of Jordan because of ego? I mean, the documentary's not over yet, but we all kind of remember what happened there. They didn't want to pay him. The ego, the brand got too big, and the Bulls have been irrelevant since. Is it the same thing in New England with Tom?
There's a lot of similarities, a lot of parallels. Don't forget, Tom Brady has his own line of merchandise called TB12. He has his own trainer. He has his own diet and supplement system. And that has really rubbed Bill Belichick raw. For Bill, it's all about the Patriots way, and we don't need outside influence. But then there's Tom. He's proudly wearing his TB12 gear. He's selling his TB12 supplements. I mean, Tom's about Tom. That's one thing the great athletes in sports do, is sell themselves. Michael Jordan is MJ, Air Jordans. He's made hundreds of millions of dollars selling Michael Jordan, no matter if he played for the Bulls or not. It's the same thing for Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. That was always an issue. I know that some of the personal trainers, personal nutritionists, the people that keep Tom going, Bill Belichick at one point said, I don't want you around the facility anymore. So Tom would have them at his home, because Bill didn't want them at the facility in New England where the Patriots practice and work out and everything, because that's not Bill's way. That's not the Patriots' way. So great athletes, when you get to that level, it is a different set of rules. I mean, he is bigger than the team. I mean, if you're the 52nd player in the Buccaneers, you don't have the same rules as Tom Brady. And the same thing for Michael Jordan or any other player. Now, a lot of players can, act like I'm the ultimate team player and treat everyone with respect, but management coaches don't. They know that whether or not they win and whether or not they're going to get another contract and they're going to make money depends on keeping that superstar happy. So it's Tom is very much like MJ that way. That's a great analogy, because they are their own industry unto themselves, who just happen to play for different teams now.
Well, Jim, as you can see, I've really been brushing up on my NFL, and it looks like that's all we'll have to talk about for some time. So I appreciate this. This has been fun, as always. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, and hopefully we can chat soon.
Okay, guys. Take care. All the best.
There you go. Jim Lang, Canada's foremost NFL expert, coverer, if that's a word, of 5 Super Bowls for Sportsnet. It's been to every facility. It's just going to be fantastic chatting with Jim as we move along and towards the NFL season in 2020, which it sounds like it's a go.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.